You know, Lucas, it's come to my attention that the Petapixel guys came to our area like, some number of weeks ago.
They didn't say hi.
They didn't say hi.
Yeah.
I mean, they were right here.
I think we were in Japan.
We probably were. Ironically, we were in Japan not for a Panasonic camera event, and they were in Austin for a Panasonic camera event.
It is a little ironic.
Yeah.
We should have stopped by Panasonic while we were there.
We probably should have. I feel like we saw stores that said Panasonic, but I mean, Panasonic's one of those massive companies. Like, I don't think we saw the camera.
It was like washing machine repair.
Yeah, something like that. Battery store or something.
Grocery store or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably what it is. Panasonic groceries.
Yep.
Love that.
These companies all do everything there.
Yep.
Whew. My upper back's a little tired today.
Is it all that biking, you think?
All that biking, yeah. And I swam. I swam like 1,200 meters yesterday.
Jeez. How far did you bike today?
Today, I don't know.
You don't even know.
20-something miles.
That's pretty good. I think you're going to have to run tomorrow.
23 and a half miles.
You're going to have to run tomorrow to complete the triathlon.
Well, yeah, I have to run tomorrow.
Yep.
Tomorrow's my long run.
Obviously.
I don't know how much I have to run tomorrow. I have to run some amount.
Just an unbounded amount.
Well, no, it's not unbounded. I think it's like, a certain amount. Pre-designated.
Yeah, that's very specific.
Yep. It looks like it would be, what's tomorrow? 9 miles.
Well, that's, you've run longer than that before. So.
Yeah, it's just 9 miles.
Yeah, it's just 9 miles.
The trick is to not overdo it whenever you're doing the triathlon training. Because it's not marathon training where you have to do these like huge mile things and you're doing the tri training because I have to do like 24 weeks. I can't do like 15-mile long runs or else I'd burn myself out, like build up too much fatigue. And so like you got to keep the long runs a little tighter.
Yep. I mean, I think it's like that with, I'm kind of trying to get back into running, after taking 8 years off, as we said on here a few weeks ago.
Daniel, am I your inspiration?
I wouldn't completely say that, but it's definitely a factor. Like, seeing you doing it feels like it's probably a good thing to do. And, you talk about it so much. I can't help but learn about it. Right. So here we are.
Well, that's true. That's like by force.
But I feel like you can't go from like 0 to really long runs really quickly. And it's not just because you don't have the endurance to do it. Like, even if you're willing to push through and do it, you shouldn't increase your mileage like way, like too much week over week, or you can hurt yourself or, just like get so exhausted that you can't effectively improve. And so it's kind of like you have to pace yourself. Yeah,
you'll absolutely get injured, and you have to be able to maintain like proper form and like learn how to do it right kind of thing. It's like 10% a week, I think, is the suggested amount.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too, which 10% a week is a little hard if you're starting from 0. It's like, anything is like infinite percentage more.
Yeah, true. And I think that you can take that 10% as volume or as like your long run, kind of on both lengths.
Yeah,
but usually I think they're talking about like weekly volume of running.
Yeah,
which is really the main thing that's like the main thing I learned during marathon training was it's really just about total volume. If you want to get better at running longer distances, you got to be running like 20, 30, 40 miles a week.
Yeah.
And like really getting over that like 25 miles a week hump is where I started to see a lot of improvement.
Interesting. I guess there's just no replacement for
displacement.
Yeah, for putting that much time in.
Yeah, you just got to put it in or to get the miles in. Woof. Daniel, did you get your Pebble?
I have not gotten my Pebble. Are they shipping yet?
I don't know. I just know that like you ordered it a year ago, and I was thinking the other day, oh, he must have it by now.
No,
but he didn't show it to me. Maybe I just have to ask him about it.
I would definitely show it to you if I got it. I think they were shipping sometime this summer. I want to say like June or July, maybe.
Did you get the Core 2 Duo?
Is that there are two models?
Right.
There's one that's e-ink, and then one that was like I thought maybe like a color screen or something. And that one's not coming out until like December. I got the Core 2 Duo one that's very similar to the original Pebble.
Right.
So for anybody who doesn't know, the Pebble is a smartwatch. It was actually like one of the first, if not the first, smartwatch that, connected to your phone and, showed your text messages and all that. I feel like it came out in like 2012 or something.
You had one before I moved to Austin.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was...
Well, that was
2015.
Yeah. So it was like 2012, 2014 somewhere. No, it wasn't 2014 because 2014 is when the Apple Watch released.
Right.
And it was
and
well
you switched
before
from
that.
the app to the Apple Watch. And you had that for like 2 years. So yeah, it was like 2012, 2013.
Yeah. And yeah, I had the first one. I thought it was great. I wore it just about every day until the Apple Watch came out. And just recently, the guys so I think that company was like bought by Google
They
or something?
were bought by Fitbit, who was bought by Google, I think.
So Google did eventually own them. And I think Google made the decision to open source the Pebble OS.
Right.
And the guys at least one of the guys that originally, worked on the team and like, I think probably like the founder of Pebble is basically saying like, I'm just going to resurrect it. I'm going to bring it back.
Yeah. Yep. Because the guy that was running it now started some other company. Mm-hmm. What was it?
I can't remember what that company was.
Oh, well, probably doesn't matter.
Yeah. But so he's bringing it back. They're releasing 2 models. The first one comes out sometime this summer. I want to say it's like $150 or something like that. But I, having owned the original one before and just in general, I think it's a really cool thing to do. Like I want to support anybody who's like just a normal person and wants to build a hardware product because that's super hard to do. And I think it's cool that he's, kind of bringing this original idea back. And I'm very much looking forward to getting that.
It was that company called Beeper.
What did they do?
There was like a messaging conglomerate thing where it's like
that was the thing where they had a bunch of Mac Minis.
Yes, where you could
it would basically like relay iMessage to non-Apple phones.
Yeah, like if you were
that idea seemed crazy.
On Android, you could have whatever. I think it was like you could have your text messages and your WhatsApps and your iMessages all in one spot, and it was in this like one app, kind of like we used to do with what was that thing that combined like AOL and Yahoo and whatever.
Pigeon,
yeah, it's like that, but Beeper and. Ridiculous. Anyways, so he sold it, and I guess now he's coming back to Pebble.
Well, I thought Beeper was kind of a crazy idea, but I'm super interested in the Pebble.
I think he's just like sticking it to Apple. I think he's now like raising fuss that he can't give a full experience for the Pebble Watch because Apple won't like give first party support anyways.
Well, I wore the Apple Watch for a long time, and I probably within the past year switched from the Apple Watch to regular watches, and a pretty big part of why I did that was just because I felt like it's kind of nice to be a little less connected and not have this, vivid color screen on my wrist that's showing me all my text messages and all that. So, I think it's been nice to disconnect in that way. And
to me, it seems like it's been a general improvement in your life.
I think it has, but I will say I still frequently look at my wrist trying to see what the weather is. I just can't get over that. Every time I want to know what the temperature is, look at my wrist. Not there.
I mean, they make watches that do that.
Well, they tell you the temperature. They don't tell you the weather.
You can't get like a Casio that tells you the weather?
I don't think so. I think, because like where would it get it from? I'd have to get it from the internet or something.
I don't know, man. So, some like radio station that it like beeps out in Morse code. They're sending out the weather to pilots all the time. That's I feel true. like you could send it to a watch. I don't know.
You would think
it does the automatic time update via radio.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any that do that, but that's one thing I'd be excited about with this Pebble is that it's an e-ink screen. So, and maybe the lack of integration might actually kind of be a plus. If I can't do everything that I would do with my phone on the watch, like maybe that kind of keeps me off of it. But just be able to get some basic information. How many steps have I gone, what's the weather, what time does the sun set, things like that.
Yeah. The answer is, as I look at my watch, 8:18 p.m.
Yeah, getting later and later.
Just the way I like it.
Well,
I hope that your watch arrives at some point. Starts shipping July 2025. Okay. It's so far away.
Yeah. A lot of big things happening this summer.
Just like simply because of the change in Bluetooth technology in the last 10 years, it's gone from, because like they found the guy who was making the original Pebble or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, we just have cases still. And so they were able to restart making it super, super quick. And because of the power savings in Bluetooth in the last 10 years, it went from 7 days of battery to 30 days of battery or something.
I think it is 30 days of battery, which is super good. Yep. And it feels like, the joke with Bluetooth for a long time was always, it'll be good next year. And I guess it's finally next year.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's been like anyway, super fun. All right, Daniel, let's get into cameras.
Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
I don't even think we have any top matter on this one, Daniel. This is literally just a Panasonic episode.
Yeah, I mean, how could it not be?
Okay, yeah, woo! Panasonic S1 II. They released two cameras, an S1 II and an S1 II Essential.
Yep.
Cool. I think they released a new lens. 24 to 60, whatever. But we're not going to talk about. We're only going to talk about the S1 II.
Yep.
This is like
that's probably going to fill the episode.
The S1 II super episode, as they say.
Mm-hmm. And we'll hit the other stuff next week. Or whatever.
So before we dive in, I do want to scroll back here in my notes somewhere. Here we go, and just go over Daniel's case for Panasonic.
I saw this earlier
that I have here in the notes, and I mean, he already. The first one on this list is the lenses, which Daniel already owns, like 10 L-mount lenses. Box camera. This isn't a box camera. LiDAR supports that LiDAR feature from what is it? DJI or something? Does this one too?
I don't know if it does or not.
Does it not?
It probably doesn't yet.
Vid features are on here. Yep. SSD recording, low light and ISO performance, GH7 but full frame, internal 32-bit recording and external module, SSD recording. Those are all the reasons that you like Panasonic. Apparently,
I like how SSD recording's on there twice.
It's on there twice, isn't it? Yep, on there twice.
Yep.
Checks out.
Two SSDs.
Big feature. And I mean, even a bigger feature now on the S1 II, because you can just copy footage to the SSD.
Yep.
Just plug a drive in and just copy paste.
Easy peasy.
Can't do that on other cameras. I don't even know where to start, Daniel.
Yeah, I don't either. I think probably most people listening to this have heard something about this camera by now, but I mean, basically they released that what was this? S1R Mark II a couple of months ago.
Yeah, this is going to be really hard.
And I think that camera, we talked about it at the time, that like it's a really exciting camera, 45 megapixels, et cetera, cool flippy screen, and like really like a pretty good feature set. But a lot of people are disappointed because the rolling shutter performance is really bad, and they felt like it was not like a Panasonic video focused camera. And they're like, Panasonic, like, we come to you because you make like really good hybrid video cameras. What is this thing? Like, why is it not meeting those needs? And everybody says like, well, like, I guess we just have to wait longer for the S1H Mark II. And you and I have been talking about the S1H Mark II for years now, it feels like. And now they've released this S1 Mark II. And I think the biggest question is this like the true S1H Mark II?
I'm going to say no. I think that even though weird, these still mostly line up with the Panasonic lineup. S5 being the cheapest. If you go back to the Mark I versions of all of these, the S1H Mark II S1H is the video focus. That one was pretty expensive. And then you had the S1R, which was the high resolution, also more expensive. You had the S1 that came down below them, and then below that was the S5. Yeah. And then there was like a cheaper one, I think, that I'm having trouble remembering. The S1 was good when it came out, but then after the S1H came out, they rolled out a lot of the S1 features into the S1. And so it became where the S1 was almost 80% of what you could get out of an S1H, and it kind of didn't make sense to get into an S1H unless you needed the fan and you needed like some more of those like power features and that more video focused body. But the S1 was still a pretty good like hybrid mirrorless camera, and almost a better like hybrid than something like an S1H. So I think that like how they're positioning this S1 really feels like a warranted successor to the S1 original, and even though it's coming in maybe quite a bit more expensive, and it does feel like it's trying to fill as much of the gap of the like much wanted S1H too.
Yeah. It does to me kind of feel like there could still, I mean, I think Panasonic has said that there will be an S1H Mark II, and it kind of has sounded like the sensor they want to use isn't ready yet.
Yeah.
So, something must be coming. I don't know if it's, some sort of like stacked 8K sensor, global sensor, who knows, but it feels to me like Whereas with the original S1, I felt like it kind of fell by the wayside, just in terms of didn't really hear that many people talking about it. It seemed like the S1H really overshadowed it for video. It feels like this S1 II is closer to, like, if we were to think of it as like a percentage, like photo versus video, I feel like it's way more on like the video S1H side of things than it is on the photo side.
Yeah, for sure. The S1R2 is almost certainly a photo camera with some pretty good video features. And the S1 II is, I would say it's probably a 60-40, if not like a 65-35 video camera.
Yeah.
I don't think it's at, not pushing, like 80-20 or anything like that.
Yeah, but I also don't think it's 50-50.
It's not 50-50. Yeah. No, it's definitely more on the video side. And like any of the reviews and anything, and maybe that's just the people that I follow, are definitely underlining this is more of a video type camera.
So I think one thing that's interesting compared to the previous S1 is the body's a lot smaller. So I think it's
smaller than the original S1?
Oh yeah, the original S1 was huge, and it had a top LCD, which this camera does not have. So the S1 II is basically the exact same size as the S1R Mark II. Like even all the cages and stuff are compatible.
It's like just the same body.
Yeah, it's the same body.
What is different than the S5 Mark II.
Yes.
Right. It's specifically in that I don't know exactly how much as far as physical size those are different. I know that the record buttons are a little different. I don't remember if the S5 II had a tally lamp. The main thing that I'm thinking of is the multi-articulating screens was added.
That's the biggest difference, I think, is the flip tilt screen.
And they added S&Q mode, or they added the video photo switch and S&Q switch, and then it took them off the dial. So the dial went from 3 customs to 5 customs.
Yeah.
And so you get 5 custom modes plus an S&Q mode switch compared to like what they had done previously in the design.
Yeah. But it's a much smaller body than the previous S1. So, a little bit more portable if that's something that you care about.
Isn't it still heavy? It weighs like 2 pounds or something.
It's still pretty heavy.
798 gramos with the battery.
1.67 or 76 pounds.
That feels heavy to me.
It's a little heavy. How much does an XH2S weigh?
Just like 20 ounces, probably. I don't know, man.
That's over a pound.
I'm not like, wait, is it? Oh, I was just making up numbers. You ask me like I'm an XH2S expert.
yeah, as if, right?
Right?
It would never be. I mean, you expect
how dare you accuse me?
Expect it to be reasonably heavy. It's a full frame camera.
It is a full frame camera with full frame features, as they say.
Is that what they say?
They do say that.
It definitely has that full frame look.
So looking that up super duper quick, that's expanding exposure, stills, video capture. I thought it was right there, and I was clearly not right because there's way more. It weighs 579 grams, man. With the battery like 660. I mean, it's 0.25 pounds lighter. That's a quarter of a pound, Daniel.
Yeah. Well, once you add the lens, the XH2S is definitely lighter.
For sure. But whenever you add the V-mount battery, then it's heavier again.
There you go.
Okay, so same as S1R2. They did the S&Q button. It's got the combo tilt flip screen, which, I mean, we're getting there. More and more cameras, right?
Super happy to see that.
Sure, Nikon released the Z6 III that had just a standard flippy screen. That's kind of a bummer. But it's nice that Panasonic's doing it. We got Panasonic, got Sony, need everybody else to do it.
Yep.
We need to bridge the gap between Team Flippy Screen and Team Tilty Screen. The war has gone on for too long.
You feel very strongly about this.
This is an olive branch.
Yep. I will say one thing that, there are a lot of reasons to think that screen style is the best, but besides the flexibility of it, I appreciate that if you're a tilt screen aficionado, this form of the screen gives you that, but it also lets you close the screen against the camera body, which is definitely something I prefer. I like being able to, secure the screen so that I'm not worried about it getting scratched or anything like that.
I'm pretty sure that the reason the screen on my XH2S wobbles is because I tried to tilt it whenever there was something in the way that was plugged in, and I damaged the mechanism in some way.
That's unfortunate.
This, with the combo screen, you can tilt it out and then have full articulation out away from the ports.
That seems pretty good.
And that's kind of like an extra bonus that I envy.
Yep. It seems like the EVF on this camera, talking about so first off, the screen is I think it's like 1.84 million dots, which is fine, but not like outstanding.
Yeah. The back screen is 1.84, and that is like okay.
Yeah,
like it's just okay.
Like we talked about the FX3A last week, and that went from like a 1.4 million dot screen to a 2.3 million dot. So it's a little unfortunate that they didn't put a higher res screen in this, but can't have everything, I guess.
Yeah, well, if you do have everything, you have to pay for it.
That's true. And the EVF is 5.76 million dots, which is again like good but not class leading.
Right. I mean, it's good enough. Right? I think that the only things that are going to be above that are like some high-end Sony cameras. I mean, even like an R5 II, I'm pretty sure is 5.76.
Yeah. The 9 million dot ones and like the Sony A1 II, honestly, like I wouldn't be surprised if that's a reasonably high percentage of their total cost of the hardware. Like those EVFs are expensive.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, that's fine. What do you think about this ongoing design from Lumix for the round eyepiece? It reminds me of, I think, what is it? Leica maybe does this too, but
I feel like I've seen other cameras with it.
I feel like most cameras have a square EVF cup, and the Panasonics have this like weird round one.
I mean, I do see how it's a little weird, but on the other hand, I don't know about you, but my eyes are round, so maybe it makes sense.
Well, I don't know. Okay, a few more like body related features. They added a mode where you can plug in USB straight to the camera to get streaming like webcam.
Yeah, I think Sony's do that.
I thought every camera did this after COVID. Yeah. Like Fuji does it, Sony does it, pretty sure Canon does it.
Yeah,
I don't know if Nikon does it, but I just assume they do. I would have thought that this was like a Panasonic feature from years of yore.
Now, you've used the Fuji feature. I haven't, so you can educate me. But I know on this one, like the distinction they're drawing is not that you can use the camera as a webcam, but that you can use it as a webcam without installing software.
Yeah.
So is that how the Fuji works too? Yeah. Like you don't have to install like Fuji
you just straight
program.
Up plug it in. You go into the USB connection mode, you set it to camera, and you just plug that puppy in. There you go. I
guess it just took them that long to get that feature.
It's just so interesting to me that's the case. I'm looking up this list of notes that I have from that game that we played, trying to find rear screen resolution to see how much this compares, and it's about the same. It's exactly the same as the S5 II, actually.
Interesting.
It is not as it's better than an A7 IV, but it's worse than a Z5 Mark II, which is a much cheaper camera.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just every camera has trade-offs, and sometimes it's they pick weird things to do, but it seems fine.
Yeah, sure. No dangling eyelets on the body. They're fixed position for the straps, which is really good.
And more common. I also noticed that the cages, again for the S1R Mark II as well, clamp to those, which is nice.
They added CF Express, which is this the first Lumix camera with CF Express?
Oh, good question. Did S5
doesn't have it.
What about the S1R Mark II?
I think that was dual SD card slots.
Interesting.
Pretty sure.
I'm surprised I didn't have CF Express, but glad this one does.
It may have. I mean, they're the exact same body, so
wasn't it the S5 II where the Panasonic rep told us that they did they didn't add it because they figured people would rather use the USB?
Yeah, they were like, we can save money by not putting CF Express in it. It's cheaper media to do SD, and if you need those faster speeds, just plug in the SSD drive and kind of get the same feature.
So one thing that's really nice about the S1 II is that I think all of the modes you can record to the SSD, which is not always the case. So on some cameras, you're limited in what you can do. And I guess I'm curious, like, you and I have both used the XH2S with the CF Express cards. It was our first experience with CF Express cards, and I think we've really come to like it.
Yeah, like changed your life or something.
Yeah, just casually changed my life. So what's your opinion? Like if you were shooting something like a 45-minute interview on this camera or shooting something like an event, do you think you would rather have a like really big CF Express card, or would you consider using this USB recording?
internal memory all the way just for critical function. Like if I'm like, I was so worried that something was going to come disconnected, or I was going to have like some sort of corruption just recording over a cable. I know it's not reasonable, and I can like use locks and stuff to a cage to make sure nothing falls out and have it totally secure. But man, if I can choose to record to internal versus external media and get the same performance, I'm going to record to internal media every time.
Yeah. I think I'm really curious to see. So they also added this feature where you can copy media from the internal storage to the SSD, which I'm really excited about. And I would love to see how that works, because I can imagine, like, we've just shot an interview, and usually before we go our separate ways, we like to make sure we each have a copy of the data, for safety. If you could do that with the camera, that's pretty cool. But the other thing I'm thinking about...
I just imagine that being so slow.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering, is how fast it is. Because the other thing I'm thinking about is sometimes you and I shoot an event and we're not the ones editing the footage. And before we leave, we need to offload that footage to whoever is doing the editing. And I can't tell you how many times I have gotten to a shoot and realized I didn't have a CF Express card reader.
Woof.
And I am wondering if in some of those situations, if I might prefer recording to an SSD, because I could very easily say, like, here, just plug this in. It's going to copy super fast, and then you can get all
having that as an option, I think, is pretty good. And I could see doing that, where if you're just handing over the footage, having something like a T5 or a T7 would be super, super quick, because you can just, those things will copy over so fast, and you don't have to carry the extra read or whatever. It's just a cable.
If it does copy quickly, though, gonna love that. Like, if I can plug in an SSD and back up my footage, like as fast as I could back it up to a computer.
Something I haven't seen anyone talk about that I am curious is if you can dual record from to SSD and to CF Express.
Oh yeah,
I know that you'll see this across a lot of cameras where, yeah, you can do, JPEGs here, RAWs there, dual record, but you're limited whenever it comes to some of the more data-intensive modes, where if the SSD can't support it, you basically can only run to CF Express.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if you could dual record to the SSD, or you see cameras where you can do like proxies to an SSD all the time. So
yeah.
Real-time follow-up here. Not follow-up, we don't do that. S1 II is CF Express. So
it makes sense. It's the same body.
It's exactly the same body. So yeah, cool. I think that's everything that's worth talking about on the body. We talked about the terrible screen, the reasonable EVF, the USB-C recording, all that cool stuff. Not to no one's surprise, full-size HDMI, audio in, audio out. Pretty sure this has a tally lamp. It's got the whatever multifunction hot shoe, if you want to call it that.
I think the only other thing I'd mention is that it's that, like, they definitely seem, it's definitely a pro body in the sense that I think they've tested it down to some pretty low temperature.
Yeah, it's like 14 degrees, I think.
And I'm pretty sure it's weather sealed, even though it has a fan. I could be wrong about that.
Does it have the fan like?
I think it does.
That same pulls in through the eyelid or whatever, or the top of the camera.
I think so. Yeah,
that's a pretty good feature. I like that Panasonic's putting those fans in. Oh yeah, it does have a fan, because whenever I was watching the rundown tests, it was something along the lines of you leave it at medium fan speed and it basically can record in 4K 30 forever.
I like having that option. You can always turn it off if you're in some weird situation where it's too loud, and it feels like, we've shot some videos outside in 100-degree weather. Yep. It's nice to be able to have, some additional cooling if you need it.
Definitely. I haven't really had too many overheat problems in my history of shooting. But boy, would I not want to.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever actually had the camera overheat, but so maybe this was 2 years ago at this point. In July, we shot a music video outside. It was over 100 degrees. Yep. I almost got heat stroke. And I know before that shoot, we were a little concerned about. Oh
yeah, we were like, we need coolers or whatever, and we found that we could store the cameras in this one cool prep room area because it was an outdoor chapel.
Yeah, because you bring a bunch of people out for a shoot, you've set up all this stuff. Like, the last thing you want is, oh, sorry, we got one take and then the camera's overheated and it's 100 degrees out here, so we can't actually get stuff to cool down. It's definitely a concern.
Don't want that to happen. Anyway, let's talk about the real deal here, Daniel. This is the sensor.
All right.
Partially stacked, 24 megapixels. Do you think this is the same sensor as the Z6 III, or do you think it's slightly different?
It's hard to say because I feel like this. So I meant to look up the specs of the Z6 III before this. I feel like it doesn't exactly line up like with the test results and specs of the Z6 Mark III, but it does seem similar enough that it could just be like a different image processing.
Yeah, the features seem different. Panasonic is doing this dynamic range boost again, but it seems to be more than what they did on the S1 II, which was more of a highlight extension, and it seems a lot more similar to the S5 II, where not the S5 II,
GH7,
the GH7, where it was doing like a dual gain type thing.
Yeah,
and it seems like whenever you're in DR mode, it is pulling off the sensor in 2 different gains. I think it's at like ISO 1000 and ISO 4000 or something in that ballpark. I
think that's right. Yeah.
And then it's combining the images into something that gives you around a stop more dynamic range, mostly on the top end.
Yeah, and you definitely like, we're pretty sure that's what's happening because you pay a like major penalty in rolling shutter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it does yield actual real world usable results. Mm-hmm. It does improve the dynamic range of the sensor and like the latitude of the image that you can capture.
Yeah.
The Z6 III isn't doing dual gain off the sensor. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's just a matter of how you circuit the sensor whenever connecting it into like your processing pipeline, or if that's a characteristic of the sensor itself. So maybe it's some Panasonic engineering, maybe it's a different sensor. We're not quite sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's partially stacked, so it means it's going to be, much faster readout, so much lower rolling shutter than something like the S1R Mark II, which is not stacked, but it's not as fast as a fully stacked sensor like the XH2S.
I'm still not 100% confident what partially stacked means. I mean, it's a matter of like, where are you putting memory components, computational components, and light collection components within the circuitry of the sensor, and whether or not you're stacking components on top of each other versus laying them out next to each other, which can shorten the amount of time it takes to like read data from the sensor or get it into memory, which can then make things way faster. Yeah. But whenever they say partially stacked, I like, what does that mean? And no one can tell me.
Yeah, I don't know the answer either. And it's either just something we don't know, or it's some kind of like secret sauce that they're maybe not super inclined to give out information on.
Or maybe it's like, I'm the only one who actually cares. And so,
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think that people with this stuff tend to look at like, what is the outcome rather than how does it actually work? I mean, I think the outcome is like exactly what you would think. Like, it's halfway, but or not halfway. It is some amount between fully stacked and not stacked.
I think what I have to do is look for an academic article on partially stacked sensors, if such a thing exists. Mm-hmm. Because if you just search the internet and browse and read, everything is exactly what you say. They're like, It means that it's partially stacked, which results in all these things that you already know.
Yeah. Yep.
Not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But what it means here is all the things that you already know. It reads faster. Maybe it's a little worse in low light. As far as latitude.
Well, it definitely seems like the dynamic range isn't quite as good.
The dynamic range isn't quite as good unless you turn on that super sick DR boost, and then it's super good. Backside illuminated, it's 25,600. No, it goes up to 551,200.
Yeah, I think so.
And then you can extend it beyond that for like one more stop. But at 25,600, it is pretty clean.
Yeah.
It's just you kind of lose a little bit of latitude on those, on like you can shoot at 25,600 and get a clean image and get some good low light footage off the sensor. But if you're shooting in the dark and you need to recover shadow, you're only going to be able to recover like 3 stops into the shadows. Yeah. So that's what I mean by not great in low light. Doesn't seem to have that blackout issue that the Z6 III was having.
Yeah, and I think Nikon fixed that in a firmware update. So I don't think that was a like characteristic of the sensor. I think it was more of a bug with the Nikon Z6 Mark III. So it just seems like, whatever Panasonic did differently, they didn't hit that issue.
And I don't think that reviewers have access to the raw photos yet to see if the dynamic range is causing, or the partially stacked is causing a dynamic range reduction in photo.
Yeah. But it did seem that way though, because like I know the Petapixel guys in their written review on their site posted side-by-side pictures of the S1 Mark II and the S1 Mark II E, where one of the major differences is that the E does not have a stack sensor. And
it's basically the sensor out of the S5 II, which is the same sensor as the S5 I, which is the same sensor out of the A7 III.
Right. And the dynamic range in photo is definitely not as good on the S1 Mark II.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
like, I mean, it's noticeable. So.
You're probably getting 14-bit RAWs in photo off of that sensor, but it's maybe not quite capturing 14 stops of dynamic range, perhaps.
Yeah. So that right there is one of the biggest reasons. That and the megapixels is one of the biggest reasons I would say this is heavily video focused and not like a 50-50 camera.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about this substantially more later in this super episode. But if you need, like, this thing comes in what, $100 cheaper than the S1 II. This is $3,200, and the S1 II is $3,300.
That's right.
Yeah, so for $100 more, if you need photo, like your 60/40 photo, or even 50/50, honestly, the S1 II may be the better buy.
Yeah.
We talked about it as like, is this the perfect hybrid camera or whatever, whenever we talked about the S1 II, and I was like super down on it, and then we talked about it, and I'm like, oh, actually, this seems pretty great from a hybrid perspective. Maybe it's a 60/40 camera or a 50/50 camera. And I think that like still holds true as to how they're positioning these. If you need the dynamic range and more megapixels at that, the S1 II is going to be better.
Yep.
And like you compare it to the S1 II to its counterparts like the Z8 or maybe even the R5 II, which is like $1,000 more. Those cameras have stacked sensors. They seem to be doing pretty good with the dynamic range. Don't seem like we're getting a huge hit, but something that's a CMOS that's not stacked is going to give you just like a little more out of it.
Yeah.
So if photo matters, but you're still in a hybrid workflow, S1 II is probably a better buy over this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I just think it's interesting because, every camera you look at has a set of trade-offs.
For sure.
There's no one perfect camera.
Except for the Z8.
I thought you were going to say the XH2S.
Dang it. Dana, wait, hold on. Rewind.
Except for the moment has passed.
Dang it.
But
except for the XH2S.
That's the trade-off of this camera is that partially stacked sensor gives you, way better readout speed for video, which we'll be talking about soon. But the trade-off is this dynamic range in photos and honestly the low megapixel count. Like I was kind of hoping for a slightly higher megapixel sensor. And I think if you take a lot of photos, that 45 megapixel sensor on the S1R Mark II is going to look really appealing for that extra $100.
Stack sensors matter so much because of speed. And like, maybe you don't shoot burst, maybe you don't shoot video. I still think that everyone gets a huge boon when the sensors read faster. Yeah. And like you can get less rolling shutter in your photos, sure, but because you're able to pull more data off the sensor, you can do more interesting things. That's why you get all this cool computational photography out of cell phone cameras, because they can read so seeing fast, so seeing small. And full frame, specifically full frame, right? Because like the XH2S is fully stacked. The the OM Systems OM1D1. It's like $2,000, $2,500. Like you can get stacked sensors for cheaper.
Yeah.
But in the full frame market was like the Z8's like $3,500. The R5 IIs were like $4,100. And
yeah, it adds up fast.
That's it, right? I mean, like sure, then you go up into like Z9 territory.
Yeah.
But those are the two main competitors, I would think, as far as cheapest stacked full frame sensors. So you're still like having to push up market.
Yeah.
It's cool to be able to see these like partially stacked options that are maybe not quite as fast, don't quite give the same amount of features, but are bridging the gap between standard CMOS and like a fully stacked.
Yeah, fortunately, at least this camera does have a mechanical shutter. When we went on our trip recently, we were taking some pictures from the train of Mount Fuji, and I was shooting with the S9.
Ruh-roh.
And the S9 has electronic shutter and is not a stack sensor. And boy, is there a lot of rolling shutter in those pictures.
When are you gonna put your Japan pictures into the shared album,
I'm just
Daniel?
waiting for the right moment, Lucas.
There is a picture of me throwing a peace sign in front of a museum.
That's true.
That I need to set as my profile picture for everything, and I just keep checking every day. I'm like, when's Daniel gonna upload his photos?
No, that's a good call out. I need to do that. Someday.
So, do you feel like that was the only time where you wanted a mechanical shutter, or do you think that there was other times and a mechanical shutter was a huge miss on the S9?
I don't think it was a huge miss. Yeah, I haven't run into trouble with flickering lights on it, which is the other thing that I would think it would really matter.
Doesn't it have a mode to help that out?
It does have it has like a synchro scan mode that's supposed to help with that. But I just honestly haven't seen that problem.
I didn't know if you needed to like change the synchro scan mode to 50 hertz whenever we were in Japan.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen any flickering, so I don't know. But otherwise, it's fine. It was a little weird to get used to at first, just because I'm kind of used to like that subtle, like you feel it, whenever the mechanical shutter goes, and it's kind of weird to not have that. It makes it feel like shooting a cell phone.
But the S1 II has it.
Yes, it does,
which is good. I think this is the right choice in sensor for this camera. I'm getting a little bored by 24 megapixels for photo cameras. It's the right sweet spot. It's the right sweet spot. I just wish for like 33 or maybe like a smidge more. But whenever you get into the hybrid world, that's 6K. 24 megapixels feels like right now the best balance that we can strike from speed and cost.
I feel like we're going to be broken records on this, but it just feels like it depends so much on what you're looking for as far as like that breakdown between photo and video.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I think that, go forward 5 years, we're probably going to start centering around like a 44 megapixel sensor that can shoot in like 8K 16. It's fully stacked. And some, the things that are in like your R5.2s and your Z8s and your Z9s now will probably become more ubiquitous farther down the road. But for now, we're still stuck in like 6K world.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
Speaking of, it seems like we should start talking about some of those video modes.
This is probably a good time to take a break, actually.
Yeah, I think so. We'll be back in just a moment, but we wanted to let you know that if you'd like to support the show, you can now subscribe to us on Patreon. It helps cover our hosting costs so we can keep the show running, and you might find an occasional behind-the-scenes post on there, like some photos we've taken recently or a mini review of some new gear. If you're interested, you can find us at patreon.com/cameragearpodcast.
It reminds me that there's like 5 things I've been meaning to post.
You definitely need to put some pictures of the Auto Boy on there.
And I was supposed to post pictures from some of those last rolls that I shot on something. I think it was the Pentax.
Yeah, the Pentax 17.
I'll throw some photos up.
Cool.
At some point. In the future.
Yep.
Probably. Daniel, you may not have heard of this. It's called LUT Lab. And they're bringing it to the S1 II.
Shocker. So shocking.
Gerald Undone did his video on this camera and was highly positive about it. But one of the things that he was promoting was his LUTs that he'll do, which I think they're free. And he took the color charts and like did like not like color matching, but basically like took the color charts and made a LUT to push the, like your just standard if you shoot in Vlog and you're going to convert it into a standard Rec 709 color space. He color corrected those so that all the colors are landing in the correct squares, basically.
Yeah. Like it's not color matching, but it's like color correctness.
Right. And so he did the color correcting, and he's done the same thing with like Sony cameras and such. And whenever you compare like color corrected footage from this camera to like a Sony camera or et cetera, pretty even match. It's just that whenever you shoot on a Panasonic, and I've seen this as well, it kind of leans into the magenta pretty substantially and also fairly saturated. And so getting those things kind of dialed in and then the magenta shift slightly corrected is helpful if you're trying to match footage off of a Panasonic. And I think that's cool for the LUT Lab thing, because then you can just put those correction LUTs straight into the camera. And then if you need to deliver, not log footage, but you want it to be neutral, like you can take those corrections and load it in. Yeah,
like I could see when you we talked earlier, like those times when we shoot events where we're not doing the editing.
Yep.
I would 100% use something like that, where I can just, here's some footage that's, it's not logged, but it's just kind of like pretty clean.
I still need to do this myself. Like I need to take some footage from the Fuji and from your S9, and then I guess the S1 II whenever it comes in, because you probably pre-ordered it. I'm sure we'll get to that later. And then like make my own correction LUTs between the cameras, and then that'll make our workflow a little more seamless. For now, I'm honestly probably going to take Gerald's LUTs and use that as a starting point in order to
seems like you did
get some correction going.
Did a pretty good job with that. So
yeah, pretty cool deal. But like it feeds in this LUT lab thing. I wish more cameras just use LUTs. I think that from a user standpoint, like just a general user, explaining what a lookup table is maybe not that complicated. It's weird that they threw LUT like actually right in the marketing and right in the user face for this thing.
Yeah.
It feels like a more kind of like techy feature or more like a video feature that I don't know. Or maybe LUTs are becoming enough of a ubiquitous word that people kind of understand what it means.
It's a little surprising, but we're talking about the brand that puts like waveform and vector scope on their little travel camera.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
So I think they've decided that's what their market is people who are willing to
who
learn
know
about
what the word
stuff.
LUT means.
Yes.
Okay, sure. But
I
I do wish that like none of the Fuji cameras support like, loading a LUT in. I mean, obviously they want you to be in their film simulation world.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, the picture stuff from Nikon and other things sort of coming.
Yeah.
I think the Sony support LUTs on camera now too. So.
I think they do. Yeah, at least on some of the newer models. Yeah, and I mean, LUT Lab's pretty good. There's some things I think it's missing. Like I'd still like to be able to change which LUT was applied, like to a RAW on the camera. That'd be cool, but pretty good feature.
Can you just take a cube file and chuck it on the camera?
You have to. So yeah, you can. It has to be a certain type of cube file. I think it's like a 33, which there are different kinds that I think are like the resolution or whatever. So depending on what you have, you may have to convert it. There's like online tools to do it.
Sure.
And I actually did one too, where I took a Lightroom preset, and there's a way to turn that into a LUT. And so I was able to make that and load it on there and use it on the camera.
Not too bad. We've spent way too much time talking about that. Let's see. Frame.io, they added Bluetooth timecode sync for Atomos Ultra Sync Blue.
This is super good because you and I have been using that on the XH2Ss.
Yep.
And I think we've been slightly disappointed with how that worked on the Zoom H4 Essential because it seemed kind of buggy
like
almost.
Manually, and you can't choose between drop frame and not.
Yeah, but on the XH2S, it's been like pretty easy to use. And so I was glad that if they were going to support any type of time code, that it was this particular product because we already have one.
Yeah, so that's super good. Other things here, obviously like waveform, shutter angle, anamorphic support, SSD recording. We already talked about copying to SSD. You can do like dual frame guides if you want to have like vertical and horizontal framing if you're shooting open gate, which thing does shoot an open gate. Other thing, no optical low pass filter.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinions on that, Daniel?
Not particularly. I always have to remind myself like what the actual implication of that is. I know it has to do with moire.
Softer image. This is going to have, you're going to have a lot sharper image. Not a lot. You're going to have a sharper image coming out of this camera, more detail to resolve, but it's going to come at the risk of moire.
Yep.
And generally speaking, if it's a video camera like the S1H2 or S1H had an optical low pass filter, the Pixis 12K that we'll eventually buy one day probably has an optical low pass filter, and that makes for a nice softer image. And it's going to eliminate a lot of that moire issue. Yeah. And as a result, without it, you can get a sharper image unless it's of like a lot of detail over there on that building. And then now you're not going to get a sharper image because you're going to start getting like lining and that sort of thing. I
wonder if it was a decision because of the 24 megapixel sensor.
I think that higher res sensors demand an OPF a little more just because you have more cross hatching. This thing has a pixel pitch of like 5.7 microns or something, or 5.76, right around there. I think I'm mixing up with that with EV resolution, but I think it is around 5 microns, which is not terrible. So, I mean, it's not like in the 3s or the 1s where you may get more moire as a result.
I guess we may just have to get a Pro Mist.
Sure, dude. Get like a little 1/4 black mist filter from our good friends over at Tiffin. Tiffin?
Yeah.
Tiffin?
I don't know. So, yeah, kind of a strange choice, but my guess is that it's because of the lower megapixels.
Yeah, probably. I think that's everything that I have written under features. There are no more features to this camera.
That was it.
That's it. Those are all of
the
them.
features.
Yep. Okay, Daniel. Let's talk about video modes. What is there anything impressive here?
No, it's not very noteworthy at all.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's so many video modes that they made it so that you can in the menus create your own list of video modes, so that you don't have to scroll through all of them.
Well, the way Panasonic does it is, kind of good and bad. So we've talked about this before, but like, Fuji kind of frustrates me in that you pick the megabits for any mode you want to use, and I always feel like I don't know what to pick. Panasonic kind of does the opposite for better or worse. And what they do is here's a set of modes, and every mode is a combination of like a, frame rate and resolution and, color depth and bit rate. And so on one hand, I like it because it's like, okay, factually, this mode is this bit rate. That's what I have. That's what I'm using. I don't have to pick. But it does mean that you have like 19 pages of options in the camera. So it's not surprising if they have some kind of custom menu thing there.
Yeah, nice that you can cut it down. Few of those options that they have available, I mean, they have all your standard modes. So like it does oversampled 4K. It does, standard or not, open gate 6K. Mm-hmm. Maybe a few of the ones that are worth kind of noting here. It will do a 5.1K 60 frames per second oversampled uncropped mode.
Yeah.
So it's like not quite the full resolution, but I guess it's like, I don't know, a 16:9 type thing. So, but pretty cool that you're getting over 4K in 60 FPS oversampled. Mm-hmm. And then you can get a 5.9K 16:9 full frame 60p. And I think I don't know if that's over. I guess that wouldn't be oversampled because that'd be just straight off the camera, right? That's pixel per pixel.
It's basically pixel.
So you can get 60p pixel for pixel and a 16:9 full width readout.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. You can do 4K 60 oversampled in 16:9, but just full width, no cropping. Mm-hmm. You can do 4K 120 cropped down to a 1:1. So if you can shoot pixel for pixel, or you can do 1.24 and then oversample. Mm-hmm. And so like you can choose to do it's like a 1.5 crop or something to get down into that APS-C pixel for pixel 4K mode and shoot 120, but you can choose to crop less, so like halfway between 1.24, oversample from the full res sensor and do 4K 120.
Yeah, and you can do that new Cinescope 4K mode.
Yep, and they added a Cinescope 4K mode, which has a higher readout speed, but it just crops the vertical resolution, so it's reading like less at a time, and then that's at a 2.4 to 1 basically.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of get like a faster mode that's, just super wide. I think that from what I've seen online, the 4K 120, just shooting like 1:1 pixel seems to be a better image than the oversampled mode. But it is cool that you can kind of, if you really don't want to crop in that much and you still need 4K 120, kind of having something in the middle is probably helpful.
And since those modes are, since that one's like 1:1 and the others are oversampled, for one thing, like, you're changing your, basically changing your focal length. But I know the 4K 120 on this camera, like, just isn't as good in quality.
Yep. Okay, so that was the other thing that we didn't quite say, or you mentioned it, but I didn't. It's 4K 120 in 2.4 to 1. So there's like 3 different ways to shoot 4K 120 on this camera. Yeah. And I think it's cool they gave you all the options because they're like, we can't do 4K 120 full, like oversampled full sensor width. You just can't do it. Here are 3 different ways to compromise. Pick which one works best for you.
Yep.
And if that's like, I need the full width, then I can sacrifice the vertical because I'm going to cut wide anyway. There you go. You got 2.4 to 1. If you just need like as wide as you can get, you have the oversampled option.
Yeah. So pretty cool.
Pretty good stuff. It can shoot ProRes RAW and
internal.
And they're not doing anything weird like Nikon was with the Z6 III. It is 4K up to 60, which is 1:1, which will have a crop because it's going to have to be pixel per pixel because it's RAW.
Yep.
Or you can do 5.8K, which is the full sensor, up to 30 frames per second. So
yeah, pretty reasonable modes.
Sweet.
You can also do Blackmagic RAW, but you have to do it externally.
Yeah, right. Which means you have to use a Blackmagic Video Assist.
Yep.
And that's not uncommon.
Yeah. I'd say most.
I think the only things that are shooting Blackmagic RAW internally are Blackmagic cameras.
I think that's right.
Cool. And then not out yet, but coming out soon, Areolog C3 LUT.
What do you think about that?
I'm on board. I mean, I think it's like you can actually just shoot. It's not even a LUT. You can just shoot an Areolog C3
it's like
internally.
A new mode.
I like Areolog C3. I think it looks great. I mean, it's just another log profile, but it is going to be a different color. A lot of people like the roll-off of Areolog. I don't think it's going to be quite the same, right? If you're shooting on an Arri camera, those are extremely high-end cinema cameras that have a lot more latitude and have more dynamic range, and just the image quality is completely different. substantially better in some cases, probably all cases. It's just not going to be the same. Like I think that it's probably going to look really good. It's probably going to have good color accuracy, some nice tones to it. But I don't think you're going to get quite the same amount of like highlight roll off that you would if you were shooting on an Arri camera. But I do really like that Panasonic is partnering with Arri to give you this option, because they also partner with Leica to get the Leica monochrome. They didn't say if this has Leica monochrome in it, but if you can get Leica monochrome and Arri Log C3 and Panasonic video features all in the same camera, it's a pretty good deal.
It feels like it. I mean, you know what you were saying, like obviously this isn't going to have the image of an Arri. Like, you know, like why would you buy an Arri camera at that point? Like there's still trade-offs, but it is cool that it can kind of match to that. And the other thing I guess that stood out to me is, you know, sometimes when you're trying to match footage, you need to find, like, you need a conversion LUT to exist. And I'm like, is Arri Log C3 in Resolve?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you can just shoot in this mode, use Resolve, like, you know, get it into a reasonable color space.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I really like that they're doing that. I think all the modes that we talked about just now are 10-bit 422. Great. The 6K on the S1 II is 10-bit 420, and I like to complain about that.
Well, and I don't think the 6K on the S1 II is 60 frames per second.
It's
probably 30.
No, it's 30 frames per second, and 4K 60 is cropped.
And same with on the XH2S, 4K 60 is full sensor, but
oversampled.
But the 6K open gate mode is 30 frames per second. So this camera is, you know, improving on those specs by giving you that at 60.
Yeah, you're getting more out of it on something that's not even fully stacked. Interesting.
Yep.
Very interesting that you pointed that out, Daniel.
So what about rolling shutter? Because that was the big problem on the S1 Mark II.
I mean, if you have dynamic range boost off, it's decent, and if you have it on, it's terrible. And
pretty much right.
I think that's the perfect trade-off, where you can decide, do I need dynamic range or do I need good rolling shutter?
So it seems like when it's off, basically everything is below 15 milliseconds, which is kind of like the cutoff that people use for like this is reasonable or not.
I think that whenever we were talking about the S1 II, it was like if you turned on dynamic range extension, it went from bad to worse.
Yeah.
And it was like, this would be cool if it went from good to bad, but it doesn't, just goes bad to worse. Here's the camera where it goes from good to bad.
Yeah. So what's the best case scenario on the rolling shutter?
I mean, if you're going to shoot like 4K not oversampled at 60 frames per second, it's like whatever, sub 10, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, but generally most modes with dynamic range boost off, you're going to be in like the 13 to 15 millisecond range. I think that like the 4K oversampled footage, whether it be 60, whether it be 30, is like 4.7 milliseconds, which to me is, I mean, if you can be around 15, you're in a good spot.
Yeah. Now it's no XH2S where that's like 3 milliseconds.
Yeah, like 6.7 or something. Like the XH2S is a lot better. I mean, that's just stack sensors. You're gonna be able to get under 10.
Yeah.
But I mean, you compare it to something like any Sony camera that's not like an A9 or an A1 II. Those are all in like the 23 to 25 millisecond range, which is, in my opinion, like when you're in the 25 range, that's borderline. 15 is good. Sub 10 is great.
Yeah.
And this is good. I have no qualms with this.
Yeah. Worst case scenario, if you have dynamic range boost on and you're shooting open gate, it's like 34 milliseconds.
Right. Yeah. It can get pretty up there.
That feels like that's going to need to be like a static shot, not a lot of movement.
Yeah. If you're going to be shooting, like, say you're going to slap a nanomorph on this thing and you're going to shoot anamorphic and de-squeeze in camera, because you can just do that on a Panasonic. If you shoot with dynamic range boost on, in that case, that is going to look nasty.
Yeah. Well, it just depends on what you're shooting. You know, if you're shooting an interview, if you're shooting like a static shot of a building or whatever, those are going to be fine, but you wouldn't want to have motion.
No, not so much. Or be like running with the camera.
Yeah.
Overall, though, like pretty happy with the rolling shutter on this. The partially stacked sensor is doing what it needs to do and makes this extremely usable. If
the photo dynamic range was the thing that I felt pushed it into video territory, this is the other thing that's kind of like, yeah, this is a pretty solid video camera based on these modes.
Yeah, for sure. So worth talking about what that dynamic range boost does as far as extending the dynamic range and how good that is. With it turned off, like you're sitting in maybe like that standard like 12 or so stop range, whenever you flip this thing on, like, yeah, you're getting a pretty big drop in rolling shutter, so like it has to be good enough to make it worth it. And it seems like whenever you turn the dynamic range boost on, you are legitimately getting almost a stop of like usable increase in dynamic range. And I was watching the video CVP did, and they like to do like latitude tests. And so they compared this to like a Blackmagic 6K, a Z6 III, and then I think an S5 II. And in all cases, it's like this with DR off, basically competitive. Like you shoot it, and if you start cranking the exposure up, if you overexpose by like 5 stops, 4.5 stops, the highlights start like crushing, basically. Yeah. Like you're starting losing detail in the highlights for all of these cameras. You turn DR on, you can start getting into like not quite 6, but like 5 1/3, 5 2/3 stop on the S1 II, which is better than like a Blackmagic 6K Cine and a Nikon Z6 III.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like, it takes it from being competitive with that $2,000 to $3,500 camera market to beating that camera market in like highlight latitude.
Yeah.
It doesn't help it really much on the low end. They all kind of like fall apart whenever you underexpose by 3 stops. That's just because it's like,
the sensor can do what it can do, right? Like,
yeah, DSLR range sensors or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it seems like pretty good. I think that in Gerald's testing, he was getting like 13.2 total, or close to 14 stops total. And then whenever you turned DR on, he was getting like 14.7 total. Mm-hmm. And then whenever you look at like the signal to noise ratio stuff on the whatever xylophone, et cetera, it's like 13.2 usable stops when it's on, and then like 12 point something off. So legitimately, compared to other full frame cameras in the market, like everything else is going to be sitting in that 11.5 to 12.5 range. This can do 12.1 with it off, which is totally acceptable. And then you flip it on, you're getting over 13.
Yeah, it's just like we were saying on the rolling shutter, it's cool that they're giving you this switch you can flip, and you decide like when it's appropriate to use it, but like you have that capability, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like most things that we shoot, we don't need like 12, 11 stops of dynamic range will be fine. I mean, we don't need like tons and tons and tons of dynamic range. I think where this really comes into play is like if you're shooting something and you have like a specular highlight, or you have some sort of bright component in the shot where
like the sky.
Sure, the sky, or like a window, for instance, and it's going to clip. It's just going to clip. Like it's fine. Yeah. It's going to clip. It's going to clip. That's just how that's going to look because it's the brightest thing in the scene. Going from where does it clip to where is it reasonably exposed, and like having more range there to kind of like roll off into those highlights, I think is going to give this like a more smooth, like filmy look. And so being able to have something that's starting to get closer and closer to those higher dynamic range type like cine cameras is cool. It gives you like some options to do some really interesting things if you're shooting a more planned scene, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or if it's unplanned and you just like need all the dynamic range in the world.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, on the XH2S, it has that 14-bit readout mode in certain modes, and we've seen benefits to that. So
yeah, it's like anything under 30 frames per second, you can get 14-bit readout, which like the XH2S gets 13 and a half to 14 stops of dynamic range whenever you do a little bit of noise reduction. Like pretty decent, but I mean, this is getting into XH2S territory, Daniel.
It's almost as good as an XH2S.
Almost as good. I mean, it's kind of better than a lot of the full frame camera options out there.
Yeah, kind of is.
Yeah, so like really good readout speed, pretty decent dynamic range, a lot of really good record modes, and I can just record 32-bit float audio via an XLR module.
Yep. Yeah, so that module is $500, which is pretty pricey. But that is a nice feature to have. Like right now, you and I use an external, we use the Zoom H4 Essential to record 32-bit float. I think we've enjoyed the one or two times we've used that so far.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like something like this, especially if you think about time code, something like this makes me wonder if that XLR module would be worth it. Because, you have the one-time investment of doing that, but then you're recording your audio straight into cameras. So you don't have to sync anything in post, and it's time code synced with anything else you're doing. So,
yeah,
pretty cool.
I like that as an option. Pretty good.
Yeah,
makes it even better for run and gun, because then you're not having to worry so much about levels. You can just get a shotgun or something mounted on there with the XLR module. Makes it pretty usable.
And I think it uses that multifunction hot shoe, so like you don't have to run a cable or anything.
For sure. Yep. I mean, I feel like we've covered most of the video stuff in this camera. There's maybe like, we could talk about IBIS. It's just good. Yeah. They have cropless EIS, which is the thing where it's like it uses the extra like little bit of width to like not crop, but does electronic stabilization. Like it's all good. It's not even worth like talking about.
It's just like I still think Panasonic probably has the best video IBIS, but
yeah, probably.
Either way, it's good.
It's just good. What are there any video features here? I mean, other than higher resolution modes, are there any video features that are missing in this camera, or is this a pretty complete package as far as it comes to like a hybrid mirrorless video camera?
I mean, I think it's pretty competitive among other things in its class. Like, I think it's offering more than you get on a lot of the other cameras. I think when I think about it, the main things that seem like they could fall short are the autofocus. And I know they had some weird stuff with like HDMI output in certain modes. And what was the deal with that?
It's like if you lose subject tracking in any modes that are over 4K 60.
Yeah.
And over the HDMI, and then if you're using like a high res mode, like a 6K, anything over 30p. So if you try shooting like 5K 60, you lose autofocus when you connect an HDMI monitor, or you lose subject tracking autofocus.
It seems like, so before the Mark II type, cameras, Panasonic's autofocus was really bad because it was contrast based and just was not good for video. And they finally fixed that by adding the phase detect. And I feel like they caught up pretty quickly in terms of having good autofocus. And this camera does more than any of their previous ones have in terms of subject tracking and all that. But it still feels like they're not at Sony level of autofocus.
Yeah, probably not. But I mean, it's like decent. The tracking is mostly okay. They have tons of subject detection modes in the autofocus. Like they added urban sports or something, so you can like track breakdancing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Parkour.
Yeah, it's great if you film a lot of parkour.
Yeah, parkour. I don't know. I feel like this is a very complete high like video feature set.
It sure seems like it. There's nothing really glaring that's missing.
Is this the perfect camera?
Well, if you watch Gerald's review, I was really surprised how positive he was, because he's kind of seemed like he didn't like Panasonic that much, and
keeps getting crap from everybody.
Yeah, he does. And the S1R Mark II, like he had some issues with it. I think you and I debated on this show whether we agreed with that or not. But regardless, like this camera, he was saying he thinks it's like top of the recommendations for hybrid mirrorless cameras.
It's hard to disagree with that. Photo side, not so much. Yeah. Like you lose some dynamic range because of the partially stacked sensor. It's super fast. You can get like 70 frames per second burst over electronic shutter and 10 frames per second on mechanical, which are like good, like very usable. The bus speed is limited. Mm-hmm. And so like it has a pretty decent sized buffer, but the bus speed is limited to what the SD card can do. So even though you have a CF Express card, you can't write to that card as fast as that card can write, if that makes sense.
Kind of weird.
So like you can shoot 70 frames per second electronic shutter and basically until you fill up the buffer, and then it takes like UHS-2 SD card speeds to drop that buffer, even if you're recording to the CF Express card. Yeah. So kind of like a bit of a limitation there. For photo, 24 megapixels, for good or for bad. Maybe you want a little more.
Yeah, I mean, we knew we were going to say this over and over. I would not buy this if you're really big into photos.
Well, if you're buying it for photo, unless you need like 10 frames per second, or like if you need the high burst rates, the Z6 III is right there, and it costs, I think it's like $2,100 right now on sale.
Is it that cheap? The normal price is like $2,500.
Yeah, the normal price is like $25. But if I look up like a Z6 III on B&H like right now, it is $2,096.
Yeah.
It's $400 off right now.
So it's $1,100 cheaper than this camera.
Yeah, so it's like if you need just the photo features, the Nikon Z6 III is like hands down a better deal.
Yeah.
Just buy that camera.
And if your budget was this high, you'd be better off with a Z8.
That too. Yeah. It's like, or you can just buy a Z8 if that's your budget. I think that whenever we did a pretty good comparison, or sort of, we like talked through like Z8 versus S1R Mark II.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that the S1R Mark II is just like, it's kind of a better photo camera than the Z8 if you don't need the speed.
Yeah.
I think that the Z8 is going to have slightly better autofocus, but like everything else as far as like screen resolution and EVF resolution and feature set and all this stuff is equal or better on the S1R2, and you get more dynamic range because you're not dealing with a stack sensor. And so it's like, in some cases, the S1R2 is a better buy than the Z8. In other cases, the Z8 is the better buy. That's kind of a tough decision. But if you're in the 24 megapixel range and you're focusing on photo, I think the Z6 III is a better buy over this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly because of the
agree.
cost. Like, it's just that much cheaper. And Nikon has a very good range of lenses.
Yep. And you could basically buy a really good lens with the camera for the price that you would pay for this one.
For sure. And like, I think that comparatively from the video side, like this kind of wipes the floor with the Z6 III. Z6 III has a lot of good features, but they got that like weird NRAW thing, and there's a lot of like compromises here and there. I think that this is like, it just is. This is a better video camera.
If you have the budget, if nothing else, just all of Panasonic's assist features and such are really nice to have built in the camera.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely nice to have. So, I mean, like, is there anything else worth talking about photo for this thing? We kind of already talked about the AF. I mean, it's just like, it's.
I mean, I think
it's there. It's
good.
It's
fine as a photo camera. Like, it's not like I would say like, well, I just can't take photos with this camera. Yeah, but it wouldn't be my top choice for a photo.
It's not like you're buying an A7S III with its 12 megapixel sensor and saying, this is my photo camera. That's like a really limited photo camera, amazing video camera. That's like a 90-10 split. Yeah. To me, this is like a 65-35 or like a 70-30 split, where like you're buying this for video, but if you like, it's going to be an extremely serviceable photo camera. Yeah, the S5 II takes really good photos, and like the low light management and all that stuff is like super decent. This may be like a little worse just because of that partially stacked loss in dynamic range and that sort of things, maybe slightly noisier. I think still think it's going to be very good. Yeah, that's my impression too. Okay, Daniel. So you have an XH2S.
Yep.
You just
sure do.
You just have one.
Yeah.
You're one of the.
I think we've had it for 3 years.
You're one of the blessed few.
Is it few? I don't know if it is or not.
With a Fujifilm XH2S. One, have you pre-ordered this camera?
I did pre-order one the day it came out, and I did that knowing I could cancel the pre-order. So it was mostly, I think this is shipping in June, like late June. And I thought, I just want to get my name on the list. I can always cancel it. And if I decide I want it, then that way, like, I'm already on the list. So I did.
Our camera future is quite up in the air.
I would say so too.
Mostly because we've been shooting on Fuji. I'm still a Fuji stan. You want to go back to Panasonic. You basically already started going back to Panasonic. Like, there's no stopping you. You already own more Panasonic lenses than Fuji lenses. And I really need you to sell me that 75 1.2. So, well, we're still shooting on Fuji for all of our like work stuff.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's still my best video camera.
Yeah. But we've talked about, potentially going into next year, what if we went up market a little bit and we moved into like a Blackmagic workflow and went with Pixis 12Ks and like just sold out the XH2Ss and upgraded. And I still think that's very possible that like we end up going that route, which is now like L mount is becoming more and more attractive because those are L mount cameras. Well, we would buy the L mount version, not the EF mount version or the PL. Yeah. But like that's part of this conversation, right? Because it's like that would be the video camera. And so you don't necessarily need your other camera to be the video camera. But if you have a bunch of L mount lenses anyway and you need to do like run and gun, the Pixis isn't going to be really a great run and gun camera.
That's the difference I see is that IBIS and compressed video codecs.
Yep.
are the two big things that and we could probably say rigging too, are the things that the Pixis is lacking for doing like event video, run and gun, that kind of thing.
Wasn't there a rumor this was going to be a box camera, like this event?
Oh, at some point, yeah. Compact cine camera, which it sort of is, but not exactly.
So it's like, does it make more sense for that compact camera to be an S1 II because it's more photo?
Yeah.
Or does it make more sense for it to be an S1 II that's more video?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I mean, I feel like eventually I need to have a really good photo camera because we do work sometimes that is photo oriented. So it's good to have like good photo capabilities. But at the same time, like, I think what's appealing to me about the S1 II is that it feels like the first camera that has really come out that I think could replace the XH2S in terms of capability on the video side. So to me, it feels like the S1 II is worth it if it feels like it could phase out the XH2.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck on that whole conversation. So like, let's do a quick rundown comparison between this and XH2S, just as a, like, why are you even comparing these cameras? One's 3 years old and is APS-C compared to full frame. Like, how does this even, like, what are you guys joking with me? Lol.
Well, they're surprisingly competitive on the video side.
Like, APS-C versus full frame. Sure. I'm still going to argue that like Super 35 for video is still very acceptable for a format.
I think so.
And if you don't need the extra width, it's fine. Yes, it's going to be a little noisier. And I'm just going to say it, and everyone can just complain. I think the X-Trans noise looks good. It's a little more randomized, so closer to what you might get off of like a film scan. I said it. Don't hate me. I like the way it looks. I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna have noise, might as well have Fuji noise.
I don't know.
Anyway, sure. Slightly more noise, smaller sensor. We'll chalk that into the S1 II winning category here. If this is like a real comparison, it is a real comparison. Dynamic range is basically the same. I think that the noise reduction that's happening with the Fuji, or like the way that the noise presents itself, makes it hard to actually apples to apples compare these things, because the Fuji yields very favorable results in lab testing because of the way that noise is presented. But if you go look at, like, I mean, I think I have it up here, so I'll pull it up here in a second whenever I'm not talking. But like, I think that they're basically like the same as far as dynamic range.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like surprisingly similar between them, and I think it's just that the Fuji, on the like stacked sensor with a smaller sensor is kind of able to, like, I mean, because it's a 3-year-older camera, but I think that like the fact that it's a stacked sensor is letting it make up for some of those things just in terms of being able to read out faster. So I feel like that's why you end up with, like pretty similar DR, pretty similar, I mean, the rolling shutter's better, but like pretty similar video modes and so on.
Yeah. So you're going to lose a lot in assist features. Like, you can't send the LUT over the HDMI. You don't have...
You're talking about on the XH2S.
On the XH2S. You don't have waveforms. You don't have vector scopes. It's not quite as full featured. You can't do like two different framing lines on the screen. It's like the Lumix is just going to have more video focused features.
You can't do that luminance spot meter. It's the best thing.
I mean, like, you can like put the focus. You can put the point on the screen, and it will show you the exposure there.
Yeah,
it's like an approximation.
It's not the same.
Sure. So like, feature wise for shooting video, like, the Lumix is just better. I mean, sure, Fuji keeps adding all these cool video features to the GFX line, and then doesn't bring it to the XH2S.
Yeah.
Don't get false color. None of that stuff.
Anyway,
so I think that's kind of a bummer. You can kind of make up the difference with that stuff, a lot of that stuff, with a external monitor.
Yeah, which we do when we're shooting.
Yeah, and so like, maybe that's fine. Comparing autofocus, who knows?
Yeah, I think it's a toss-up.
It's probably a toss-up.
Neither are class leading, but they're probably both decent.
Yeah, like good enough. As far as latitude, I think they're fairly similar. I think the XH2S may come out a smidge ahead on latitude, but probably not so much with DR boost on. I think that it kind of depends upon how you're comparing those.
Yeah.
IBIS wise, the Lumix is going to be way better.
Yeah, that's something that I've been a little disappointed with on the X-H2S.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're trying to get to like handheld smooth shots.
Yes.
It just doesn't quite, you still get some juddering. Mm-hmm. Lumix obviously has worse camera menus.
I don't know about that. I feel like you try to sneak that in there.
It's objectively worse. Mostly. I haven't really used the Lumix ones, and so I'm unfamiliar with them, and it's hard to find anything because
that was my problem.
I'm unfamiliar.
That was my problem before I got a Fuji. I would try and change things on your camera and have no idea what to do.
Therefore, from my lived experience, substantially worse.
Yep. I also like this other point you have, magenta color shifts, because you could turn that the other way and say that Fuji has a very green color shift.
It does tend to green. Yeah, true. Well, kind of. I mean, I think you still get a bit of a magenta in the skin tones, but somebody said the Fuji's got better color. I personally love the color that I get out of the camera. Yeah. Just straight out of camera. Fuji looks so good.
I like the film simulations, and I think that Panasonic has continued to miss the mark by not offering a good set of preset LUTs in the LUT lab. Like, they have the technical capability. There's no reason that they shouldn't have like 10 LUTs preloaded that are, giving you like similar differences as what you get with the different Fuji film simulations. Like, I'd love to see that. So I think Fuji gives you the ability to have more flexibility in your pictures, and that was something that drew me to Fuji to begin with. But personally, I feel like I really like the image out of Panasonic, and that's why I've been excited when I've been using the S9. It's just like, maybe it's because I learned on it, I don't know, but I just like the colors and picture that I get out of it.
I feel like the out of camera color both super matters, both doesn't matter at the same time. That used to be the main thing. It's like which thing has the best color science.
Yeah, that was a huge conversation a few years ago.
And which one looks better? And we've shot things where, like on the Panasonic, you can do like boost color and like not like full vivid, but it's like standard and like color boost or whatever. And there's like I don't know, Daniel. I don't have one of these cameras. But if you shoot in like the more like saturated than standard mode, like that, it looks like super punchy and super good. It's also like just like really hard to match anything to it because it's so freaking saturated. And I kind of hate it, but also like it does catch your eye. It's very much like whenever you're comparing a Samsung photo to like a iPhone for a Pixel photo or whatever, where it's like, wow, this thing's like way more punchy. But like we've done recap videos where it's like I have a ton of S5 II footage and I have to mix in the Fuji footage. I'm not going to like match one. I'm going to match the Fuji to the S5 II.
Yeah.
And it's like,
if crank that saturation up to like 75.
It's like if you stare at the S5 too long, if you're like, man, this is like really pleasing to the eye because it's very candy, because like it's just so, it pops so hard. And for some things,
pops so hard.
For some things, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And I can see why like one might like the Lumix look. I like it in some cases where it's like, this is the way I want it to look. I have trouble getting the Fuji to look like that.
Yeah. I'm just a simple person, Lucas. More color good.
I'm not going to
more color best.
Sure. But like we like the most recent interview thing that we shot, we had the two X-H2Ss and we shot with the S9. Mm-hmm. And I had the hardest time matching the S9 until, so like whenever if you're color matching and like you're still learning to color match, the trick is just follow the scopes. Like sometimes you have to like look at the image and try to figure it out. But what I've learned is like you gotta be like Luke Skywalker, and like you're going into the trench, and like you just have to like feel the force. And what that looks like is just looking at the scopes. Don't look at the image. Just like cover it up. Only look at the scopes, and you just gotta do it.
just gotta feel it.
Just gotta feel it. Just gotta like, all right. Here's one image, here's the other image. We're going to make these scopes match. Mm-hmm. We're just going to make a match. Yeah. Boom, done.
I mean, it is true, though. Like, you're better off looking at the data than you are at looking at the picture.
Yeah, I couldn't get them to match until I was just like, use the force, Luke. Anyway, so point is, I really like the way that the Fuji looked in that shoot.
Yeah.
With, like, the amber light in the back, like we use one of those amber tube lights in the background, and, like, the way that the highlights rolled off, and kind of more of like when you're shooting a person and you're dealing with the skin tones, the amount of like color and dynamic range information that you have within the band of how you expose their their skin of like where's the darkest spot and where's the lightest spot, and making it so that you have a really nice curve through that range and you're not getting any sort of hot spots and there's not any of like weird banding, and just dealing with that. I have a better time on Fuji dealing with the contrast through the skin tone range compared to dealing with it from the S9 footage and the limited exposure that I have had.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm like, I just kind of prefer that. But like, to the whole point of this, you can kind of make anything look the way that something else looks, as long as it's not Sony A7S, A7 III footage, because that 8-bit footage is hot garbage. But 10-bit 420, 422 footage in log is very flexible, and vlog is extremely good to work with, and it's very malleable. And you can basically make F-Log 2 and vlog mostly match kind of like any good log profile.
Well, and this is a different sensor too with more dynamic range. So it's also a little unclear, how that's going to be.
Yeah. So like maybe it'll be different, but I think that like you can't say one color is going to be better than the other, but I think that the Lumix is going to have better out of camera for like punchy, exciting footage. And the XH2S is going to have more of like a film look. Shooting that a turn up.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I think that a lot of it is going to come down to, what we think the challenge is going to be with that matching, as well as what we see our future being of shooting, that style of video, like which cameras we think we're going to be bringing to stuff. Because when I think about it, I'm super down for the Pixis idea, and I think that would be, a really fun direction for us to go in. And if we're shooting something like an interview, if we have those cameras, that's going to be the obvious choice. But I just still picture a lot of situations where I'm not going to want to use a Pixis to shoot video.
Yeah.
Things
for sure.
like any run and gun situation, like it's not going to be the right choice.
No, it makes it a lot more challenging.
And so that's kind of where I am really interested in this camera, because I feel like it gives me some things that I'm not getting from the XH2S. Like I'm excited about the full frame idea, better IBIS, lower noise, full frame. We didn't mention the video modes that it can do that the XH2S can do, which is a lot more options in 4K 120 with like the wider aspect ratios. You're getting 5.9K or 6K up to 60 frames per second, which you can't get on the XH2S. And that doesn't come at a cost of the dynamic range, really. I think those are the main things. Yeah. And for me, I just really enjoy the experience of shooting on Panasonic. I'm used to the menus. I like the colors better. And so for those reasons, like it's really appealing to me. I think that like part of the question is, does the S1 II make more sense? But I just feel like right now I'm interested enough in video that I think I would have a hard time making the trade-offs that the S1 II asks you to make in that area.
For sure. It's a tough one. That's a tough one when comparing the two. I think that this is the first time a camera's come out within budget range, particularly for you, that I think legitimately could replace the XH2S for what we're using it for.
Yeah. It's an interesting spot for us to be in.
That little bit, especially since you've bought all those Panasonic lenses.
We do have the other option of like, I get that camera and use it for run and gun, but we just keep the XH2S body, to use for those interviews. Like, I think a lot of it comes down to how hard that color matching is. And if it feels like it's this big struggle that adds a lot to our workflow, like maybe it's not worth it.
I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I think that we just grab a color chart and shoot it and set up some LUTs and we'll be fine. And like, it just will be totally fine. I think that it'll help with matching some of the other stuff that we do. I still think that considering this against the S1 II is maybe still difficult. For me, like, I don't see myself giving up like my XT5.
Yeah.
Like my XH2S is not long for this world. If as you move into Panasonic and we consider like moving more into L mount for video stuff, I would still probably keep my XT5 as like my main photo camera. And so I'm not going to need
40
like
megapixels.
Yeah, I'm not going to need like a secondary photo camera.
Yeah.
But if I was like totally divesting from Fuji, like you're considering doing / are doing, to me, it's like if I had a dedicated video camera like a Pixis, I would buy the S1 II for me.
Yep.
Because I want a high resolution photo camera, and I would deal with the like worse video stuff on that camera in order to get the better photo features.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. Like the best answer is get both. Which, you know,
if we weren't going to buy
if we weren't going to buy $10,000 of Blackmagic cameras,
sure. If that doesn't happen, which maybe it doesn't happen, could probably not happen, then yes, like a S1 II and an S1 II. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
S1 II, like that combo is a pretty great combo if you need like good photo and good video and you want to have like the two cameras.
And you get commonality of batteries, lenses, cages, like all of that is the same.
Yeah, cool. For sure. I think that also kind of comes down to whether or not that photo camera is like your pro photo camera or your like vacation photo camera, because I would not be carrying around an S1 II on vacation. I really like the sizing of the Fuji for that.
Well, and like for me, I have the S9.
Yeah, that's like your vacation
continue
camera.
to be like casual camera.
Yeah, that's real tough, Daniel. That's real tough.
I feel like, you know, where I'm at right now is keeping my S1 II pre-order. I feel like it's kind of what I've been looking for in terms of something that does stack up well enough against the Fuji. And photo wise, you know, I don't have a 40 megapixel photo camera right now.
Earlier when you said stack up against the Fuji, was that a censor joke?
No.
Okay.
I wish it was.
Just checking.
I don't have a 40 megapixel photo camera right now. I feel like the photo capabilities of the S1 II are not like really any worse than the XH2S.
They're good enough.
And, you know, and so it's eventually I would like to have more photo capabilities, but I feel like I'm fine with that being like a someday thing.
That's fine.
You know, see what happens with this Pixis deal. If we end up investing in that may change, you know, what I do. But I don't know. I'm definitely pretty interested in this camera. You know, the only other question I think is a S1H2 coming? And I think the answer to that is probably yes, but just who knows when that is? Who knows how expensive it'll be? And I don't know.
That's enough of an unknown that I think it's fine to pull the trigger on S1 II. If like for all of us out there who have been waiting and waiting and waiting, I mean, it was 2022 when I was like S1H Mark II camera of the year, and didn't happen. I think like this is the S1, or this is the Lumix hybrid camera we've been waiting for. It is uncompromised as far as its speed and shooting capability, and that like you can get 6K 60. You can get 4K 120 not uncropped, 4K 120. You can get 4K 60 uncropped. Like, it has all the features for a good hybrid camera. I think the S1H Mark II is going to just be like that much more. But I think that when that comes out, it's like, well, for the price, do I really need those features or not? The S1 II is probably still good enough. I think it's like, this is the one people probably should like just go ahead and get it if you've been holding out for that long.
And, you know, honestly, if the S1H2 comes out and it's just that much better, like let's say it comes out in 6 months and it's just super, super good and everybody wants one, you'd probably be able to sell your S1 II for a pretty reasonable price. Like your upgrade cost is not going to be, you know, it's not like you're going to buy another $4,000 camera.
Right. For sure.
I think that's easy to forget too. It's not like you can always sell what you have if you're not happy with it.
Yeah. So we are knocking on the door of this probably being our longest episode. So I do think that we've talked about like how this compares to the S1R Mark II, how it compares to Camera of the Year 2023, the XH2S. I think that we do need to compare it to like other things in this price point real quick, just worthwhile. I think that the R6 III is kind of in this range. That can do like uncropped 4K 60. I think it's like a decent hybrid, but it is still fairly compromised on the video specs compared to this, as far as just like features, whether does it have any sort of overheating issues, does it have any record limit issues? Like you run into some of those Canon problems with the R6. I do think that this is a better video camera, but maybe the R6 is better for photo and it's cheaper.
That could be. Yeah, you might make that up on lenses though.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are getting these cheaper lenses, and so you may make it up on lenses.
Yeah.
There's the Z6 III, which we already said is probably a better photo option because it is substantially cheaper.
Especially on sale, man. $1,100. If you want a photo camera, just $2,100. Just stop looking. Just get the Z6.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I don't know, like the Z6 III is, like you still need to compare it to some of the other stuff out there. But I think that like photo, it wins over this. Video, it doesn't. Could maybe have the same argument for the R6 III. I think you have to compare this to a Z8. which is a really interesting comparison.
Especially on sale. Like, I mean, the Z8 is a like higher price camera, but I feel like on sale, it's like knocking on the door of this.
Yeah, it really is. It's like maybe $100 or $200 more. You're going to get probably better autofocus, better pro photo features out of the Z8. And so it's like you want a high-end, high megapixel photo camera. I think that's maybe going to be a tough comparison with the S1R Mark II, but it's definitely like better than this. And you get 8K video. So like, and
if you need that, then
you can get like that conversion to Red Raw, which is like pretty cool.
And definitely for photo. I mean, for photo, it's like no question the Z8 is going to be better.
I think that's mostly everything that's probably in this range compared to. I wouldn't pick this up. I wouldn't pick up an A7 IV over this at all.
Well, I wouldn't be buying an A7 IV at all right now. I'd be waiting to see the A7 V.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think that the A7 R5 and the R5 II are too expensive to compare.
Yeah. Well, and especially the A7 R5, I feel like really you need to compare that against the S1R Mark II because they're both high megapixel photo, more on the photo side than the video side.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is a little expensive, but I think that the feature set that you get, like to me, this was supposed to be a $2,500 camera, and like they just couldn't deliver it for that, so it's a $3,200 camera.
Seems that way to me too.
Maybe if it drops below $3,000 on sale, like all of a sudden this kind of like the conversation changes.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're looking for a 60-40, 70-30 video to photo split, this is kind of like the winning camera in that price bracket.
Yeah.
But once you start dipping into that 50-50 range, all the other cameras we talked about, S1R II, Z8, Z6, R6 Mark III, are probably better options.
I think, I can't really say it better than that. Although I will say, I think this is the camera people have been waiting for from Panasonic.
I absolutely agree with that. Like we've been talking about, oh wow, look at the S5. Oh man, it's still the old sensor. Oh, like great that they added face detect. Wow, super great price. It's going to be cool whenever we see the camera that's up market from this.
Yep.
And it's just been a waiting game for 2 years.
Yep.
I agree. Like this is what we've been waiting for from Panasonic, and it's kind of like the most uncompromised hybrid camera that they've released. And it's like, it's just super, super good.
Yep. Camera of the year.
Oh man.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.